Welcome, everybody, into the Brickyard podcast. We are back with the documents, and we are about to unseal them. We're about to go over every single top 10 trade, according to NFL.com, that happened in the NFL season. And if you missed it, you will be caught up. We're also going to go over the NBA draft lottery that just happened a couple days ago when we're recording this right now. And as Jaylen Brown said, we are not here for the weather. We are here to win, and we're going to go over every moment so far that's happened in the NBA playoffs and how it's going to be relevant to the story of the NBA for decades to come. But without further ado, we did have a massive signing in the NFL. We had the disgraced, the rejected, some would say ostracized, discount Ryan Gosling, Jared Goff. He's back, and he signed a massive deal, and he's currently, I believe, the highest paid quarterback by year now.
Yeah, he got paid 4 years, $212 million, $170 million guaranteed.
Say it again.
$212 million. The highest paid Lion in Lions history. Congratulations, Jared Goff.
Congrats, Jared. I mean, for someone who was so destroyed by the media, I felt like for someone like Jared Goff, he came into the NFL and you have Jeff Fisher as your coach. You're like, oh, this is like playing for Rick Pitino or John Calipari when they were an NBA head coach. And then you walk in to the worst situation possible, a guy that wouldn't know an offense if it was written on a brick and hit him in the head and knocked it into his brain. He still wouldn't know it was there. He wouldn't know how to pull that offense out of his brain. He would still just be sitting there thinking about how he could ruin another quarterback's career, like a Jared Goff, like Sam Bradford. Then Sean McVay comes in. Oh, suddenly Sean McVay fixed Jared Goff. It's all Todd Gurley here, even though they get to a Super Bowl there. And he's like, Jared Goff, you're not good enough for me. Trades him away to Detroit, of all places. Jared Goff, California guy, California, warm weather, freezing cold Detroit, Michigan, where you literally get snow because it's so cold off of the lake. And you sent him there to the frozen tundra. Then Dan Campbell says, hey, man. No, he didn't say, hey, man. He says, hey, man, we're going to rebuild your confidence. We believe in you. You're our guy for our team, and it's all about grit. You're going to be the one to get us there, man. And now Jared Goff has worked with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's worked with the Detroit Lions, been there every step of the way, brick by brick by brick, rebuilding the Lions, a team that had not seen playoff success, leading them to the greatest season ever in that franchise history. How many people can say that they've led their team to the greatest season ever? Not that many people. And now Jared Goff goes from outcast to signing the largest contract in Lions history after leading them to their most successful season. Well-deserved, Jared Goff.
Well-deserved, Jared Goff. And here we are now. Everything you mentioned there, the slander. I remember when he was going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes in L.A. You remember that classic Mexico City game. And then between there and 2020, he went from premier quarterback in the NFL to disgraced, out of L.A., abandoned him, swapped him for 34-year-old Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford obviously goes on to win the Super Bowl. And now at this point, the conversation can be had, who won the divorce? Because at this point, I look at it, Jared Goff going from the beautiful palm trees of LA, going to what was equivalent then, maybe not quite Tepperville, but one of those teams that you go to and die, like the 2000s Cleveland Browns, like the Panthers of today, like at this point, the New England Patriots. You go there and your career is completely over. Plenty of examples of it. You go there, and not only do you resurrect that team, but you bring them to their peak that you haven't seen them since maybe Barry Sanders, if even Barry Sanders. And then signing this massive contract, you look at them compared to the Rams today, where the Rams are, where the Lions are perennial, at this point, going to be perennial Super Bowl contenders, where the Rams aren't quite there yet, and Matt Stafford is on the wrong side of 30. at this point, I think it's safe to say the Lions might have actually won the divorce, especially with who they got in return.
Yeah, I think for that, it's a little bit complicated because the Rams did accomplish their goal and win a Super Bowl. So I think once you win the Super Bowl, automatically you won that divorce. However, you can also look at it like, did we actually need to give up that much capital to acquire Matthew Stafford when Jared Goff probably could have gotten the job done? Because guess what? Jared Goff didn't have Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr., who had his last year, and Odell Beckham Jr. was in that season with the Rams. He picked up a call. It was from 2016, and Odell Beckham Jr. turned back the clock for that season. That was really the underrated storyline in that Super Bowl on why the Rams won. It was because of Matthew Stafford, but at the same time, Jared Goff was there. He had been there, and when he lost, it was because Todd Gurley didn't have any knees at that point. You had Cooper Kupp there, but he didn't have that number 2 like a Odell Beckham Jr. It was still the Robert Woods of the world as his number 2 receiver. However, I think the Rams still end up winning the trade because they get to the Super Bowl. They end up beating the Bengals there. And then the Lions also win it because they had their greatest season ever. They get stability, which stability in Detroit, that's something that's unheard of. And the fact that people are casually talking about Detroit being the favorite to win their division, being expected now to make the playoffs, and now you're expected to win games, and you have the expectation of being in the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl. That's like a Super Bowl for the Detroit Lions. So I think there's not really a clear winner and loser because I feel like, hey, I don't really like handing out participation trophies, but I think we're all winners in this situation, and this is just a positive outcome where it really worked out for both teams here, which you definitely don't see that often in sports, especially when Danny Ainge is involved.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the case there. I think if the Lions end up winning a Super Bowl, then at this point, it's no contest that they win that Super Bowl because they wouldn't have won it with Matt Stafford. And then all the picks that they got turning into the Jameson Williams of the world, turning into the Penei Sewells, turning into all the players that turned into that team. I think they ended up getting Sam Laporta, I believe, with one of those picks as well. With that, with all the players that they end up getting in return, and they potentially win a Super Bowl, that's when we can revisit that conversation, which I think they're geared to do so this year. And they should have honestly won it last year if they could have just had a better second half.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they were right there to win the Super Bowl, especially because once they're in the Super Bowl and it's Jared Goff versus Patrick Mahomes, you've already won because Jared Goff owns Patrick Mahomes there. But I think this is a situation where we do have to wait for the Lions to actually win the Super Bowl to say that they definitively won the trade. But I think both teams won right now because the Lions, no one talks about the Lions this way. No one has ever talked about the Lions this way unless you grew up in the 1960s or 70s. So the fact that we're talking about them this way now, I say that's a win for Detroit, but I can already hear the people right now. Oh my gosh, how could you pay Jared Goff $212 million for a B-plus quarterback? It's going to ruin your franchise. And to that you say,
fools! They paid Amon-Ra, they paid Penei Sewell, and now they paid Jared Goff. They have their core set for the next 4 years, and I think within those 4 years, you could definitely see them in that Super Bowl. So, big trade. I mean, we talked about this Matt Stafford, Jared Goff trade, but if I'm not mistaken, there was a few trades that went down this offseason. And lucky for us, we have the NFL.com up here with the great Tom Blair, and he went over the top 10 traded players and who will make the biggest impact in 2024.
Yeah, so we'll go over these 10 players who are traded, and if you weren't following the NFL in the offseason, maybe you're one of those people who's a casual who just watches on Sunday, you just watch your team, maybe you weren't aware your team acquired one of these players. We're here to recap it, break it down, and let's start off with this list here. And at number 1, we have Stephon Diggs traded by the Buffalo Bills for a second-round pick with Houston, and now the not the Buffalo Bills, the Houston Texans have Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, Joe Mixon in the backfield as well, and they re-signed Dalton Schultz here at tight end. Do you think this deserves to be the most impactful trade of the offseason?
Yeah, I think so, because with how good they were last year, plus with the additions they had in free agency prior to this move, Stephon Diggs potentially brings them to that level where maybe they're not the Kansas City Chiefs, but I think they're the second best team in the AFC after this move with that solid number one. So I think number one, Stephon Diggs, I think that's inevitable.
Yeah, and I think especially with the division you're in right now, there's still uncertainty, Like the North is still the North where the Steelers, no matter who's the quarterback, they find a way to be good and they find a way to beat each other up in that division. The Ravens are there, the Browns, even with Jameis Winston or Deshaun Watson, we'll see, but they can still give any team in the NFL a tough time on any given Sunday. Whereas the Titans, you kind of look at them side eyes. You're like, Brian Callen, we don't know. Or Brian Callahan, not the comedian Brian Callen. And then we have also the Titan. We have the Jaguars there, who are very disappointing last year. We'll see if their
Always
draft pans
disappointing.
out, but we know how they draft players based off of their arms, not their talent. And then we also have the Colts, who are also a question mark if Anthony Richardson's going to stay healthy. You don't have Gardner Minshew there, so I think with the Bengals kind of being in a little bit of we don't know what's going on with T. Higgins or Trey Hendrickson, who are arguably two of our top 5 players on our team. It's like you are right there for being the best team in the league, not named the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's why that move is so impactful. And I think we're going to see it pay dividends this offseason. I think they're going to make the AFC title game.
Yeah, and then we have at number 2 here another wide receiver, but this time it's the Chicago Bears, and it's someone named Keenan Allen from the Chargers. They have this as the second most important trade.
I mean, we'll see how this ranks it. I feel like number 2 might be a little high. However, with this trade with Keenan Allen, this makes it important for the fact that now you have DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and then they inevitably drafted Romeo Odunze. So I guess bolstering that wide receiver core, which has been lacking for ever at this point. So, I mean, I don't know if it's the second most impactful, but if we're looking at just impactful, definitely a great move. 4th round pick for Keenan Allen. That was a steal.
You know how it's impactful? It's not necessarily on the field with Keenan Allen, especially because he's getting older. And I think he will be very productive this year, especially with DJ Moore taking pressure off of him. Finally, you have another receiver who can stay healthy, unlike Mike Williams. And then you also have Cole Kmet, who's going to take so much pressure off of him because he is a luxury, the most underrated tight end in the NFL. And you have Romeo Odunze there, but you also have a young receiver in Romeo Odunze, DJ Moore, who's kind of been trying to channel his inner top number 1 definitive wide receiver, and you have Cole Kmet there, who's still a pretty young player. So what this does, you bring leadership into that wide receiver room. You have a veteran presence who can counsel Romeo Odunze. You also have a veteran leader in that wide receiver room in the offensive meetings with Caleb Williams. And I think this also helps bring in a good mix of, we have someone kind of at the end of their career in Keenan Allen, in the middle of their career in DJ Moore, and someone at the start of their career in Romeo Odunze. And what everyone has said about Romeo Odunze is he is the hardest working wide receiver in the draft. He's going to study the hardest of any receiver. And I think if Keenan Allen can help channel that, I think that's where the impact is really going to come.
Yeah, I think so for sure. So I think that's an important move right there.
And then this is where the list has a problem. Number 3, Jerry Jeudy. Absolutely not. The Browns didn't need him to begin with.
I mean, I guess 5th and 6th rounders, that's about right for Jerry Jeudy. I need to know this here because clearly, somebody who's obviously casual, comments call me it every week. What has Jerry Jeudy done in the NFL? Has he even had a 1,000-yard season? If he's had 1,000 yards, it's 1,010 yards. Congratulations. I understand you've been in the living hell that is Denver, Colorado, but at the same time, you haven't done anything. At your best, you're probably a 3rd wide receiver on this team because you have Amari Cooper, you have Elijah Moore, and then hell, you even have David Njoku and Nick Chubb when he comes back. So where does Jerry Jeudy fit in the mix, and how is he going to impact the Browns? Because I really don't think it's going to move the needle all that much.
Yeah, how is he better than Amari Cooper? And then you also have DJ Moore on that team who is better than him. So I guess if you're replacing Donovan Peoples-Jones, great. Okay. Great replacement for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Other than that, Jerry Jeudy's a 3 and you gave up a 5th and a 6th round pick for him, but the third most important trade of the offseason, when most people could sneeze and have more of an impact on the field than Jerry Jeudy if they got their corner they were going up against sick, like that's more of an impact than Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I don't see him moving the needle much at all for Cleveland. They're still pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah, because my biggest problem with this is you put Jerry Jeudy at number 3 above Brian Burns, who was probably the most sought after defender available this offseason, right? Who also, you want to talk about the Panthers making the worst deals in NFL history? You didn't even have to give up a first round pick for him.
Yeah, you're talking about 2 years ago when the Rams were offering not 1, not 2, but 3 first round picks. They say, no, we're going to sign him. And then Brian Burns says, no, you're not. You're not going to sign me. So then they give up and get a 2nd and 5th round pick for Brian Burns. The Giants absolutely finessed them out of their pennies. Almost, keyword almost, for giving him for Daniel Jones. That's going to be way more impactful. The Giants defense should be a lot better, especially because they have Bobby Okereke on that team and Kayvon Thibodeau. I'm excited to see how that team goes.
Yeah. And you have, like, unfortunately, Daniel Jones is on this team, so it's not really going to matter that you acquired Brian Burns, but it's still more important than Jerry Jeudy.
Anybody's more important than Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
At this point.
Hence, our number 5 person on this list, L'Jarius Sneed. I don't know, a top 3, maybe the best corner in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and they got him for not really that much. They got a 3rd round pick in 2025, a late round pick this year, and that was it.
Not a late round pick, a 7th round pick.
Yeah, so they got literally the last round in this draft, and then next year they get a 3rd round pick. Very cool. Not very much at all for somebody who is one of the top defensive players in the league.
Yeah, for a Titans team who really needed some help in the secondary this year, and now it's a team that's starting to rebuild and put some pieces back together. You're bringing in, I don't know, a winner into your locker room, someone who has seen the Chiefs operate, who can go to Brian Callahan, someone who went toe-to-toe with the Bengals. So now you're bringing in Chiefs culture and Bengals culture to the same organization. Tremendous combination.
Yes.
Tremendous.
Bravo. And they signed Tyler Boyd, which is cool, I guess.
Tyler Boyd's cool, I guess, yeah. And then someone more impactful than Jerry Jeudy at number 3 for some reason he was there. We have Hassan Reddick.
Yeah, Hassan Reddick. So already these people, we have 3 defensive players in a row who are more impactful than Jerry Jeudy. This is not meant to destroy Jerry Jeudy, but Jerry Jeudy had no business being as high as he was.
Yeah, it's not our fault that, let me see.
They put him 3rd, I think.
Yeah.
They put him 3rd. 3rd most impactful. That's crazy.
Yeah, shame on you, Tom Blair.
Tom Blair. Tom Boob is what we call him.
Tom Boob. And then also someone more important than Jerry Jeudy, Carlton Davis, who I think is more impactful than Hassan Reddick. Hassan Reddick really wasn't giving the Eagles the extra juice that they needed because they had one of the worst pass rushes in the NFL at the end of the year last year. So you're bringing him onto a Jets team who, I mean, he'll be like okay for them, but it's like the same equivalent as having Mike Williams on offense, and then you have Hassan Reddick. But Carlton Davis to the Detroit Lions, that's going to be way more impactful because not only did they draft 2 corners, now you bring in a veteran corner to a very secondary needy team. I think this is way more impactful than Carlton Davis.
Yeah, I think so too. Their secondary was their big hole last year. They got Terry and Arnold in the draft, and they get Carlton Davis, along with all these other players that they have drafted the last 2 years growing and develop. So I think that's a home run pick for them. I think he's going to make a big impact.
Yeah, and then at number 8, we have Malik Collins going to the San Francisco 49ers. It's really a big deal because you traded a 7th round pick for him. You get some more depth, but again, this is really just a case of the rich getting richer.
Yeah, I mean, how much does this move the needle for the 49ers? I don't think too much, but it does make them better.
Yeah, my question is, does it help Kyle Shanahan understand that if everyone talks about how great you are at running the football, if you are really great at running the football and have the best running back in the NFL, maybe if you have a lead, you should run the football to drain the clock? I don't know. Crazy thought, but...
And also, if you're a head coach in the NFL, know the overtime rules, right? Against, I don't know, the greatest quarterback of our generation.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Just a thought.
Maybe they traded that with the 7th round pick. Who knows?
Oh, we still would have taken the ball anyways. Bullshit. I call buffoonery. That's a lie.
Bonafide buffoon.
And then we have Deontay Johnson of the Carolina Panthers, also more impactful than Jerry Jeudy going to the Browns. Because not only do the Panthers not have receivers outside of Adam Thielen, God bless his soul, prior to Adam Thielen rotting away in Carolina, but the Browns already had receivers, and Deontay Johnson is better than Jerry Jeudy. Sorry, he is.
Yeah, Deontay Johnson's better. Now they actually have a pretty solid wide receiver. Deontay Johnson's a nice player. And now you have him and Adam Thielen. You still have a bad receiver core, but now it's better. So improving it, whereas Jerry Jeudy didn't really do much to improve the Browns wide receiver room. So the Jerry Jeudy roast continues.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy roast continues. And then also someone more impactful than Jerry Jeudy, Justin Fields to the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they really didn't trade anything for him. A 2025 conditional day 3 pick. Okay.
Bummer.
But my one thing is, and we haven't really talked about this that much, the Steelers are trying to use him as like a kick returner. They're trying to integrate him as like a Taysom Hill player. They're saying Russell Wilson is their guy. I'm a little bit confused about this because if you watched last season, is Russell Wilson a better quarterback and better at reading the field than Justin Fields? Yeah, probably. But does Justin Fields give you way more explosive plays, way more big play opportunity downfield, and make the defense a lot more nervous than going up against Russell Wilson, who can't really do much down the field anymore? I think so.
Yeah, I feel like if they can use him, I feel like Taysom Hill might actually work for him because in his 4 years as the Bears quarterback, he hasn't been able to read the field very well. So he's not really a threat throwing it down the field, but he's more of a threat running it. So if they can find a way to complement it well, I might actually think Justin Fields' career is going to be extended because of it. Because I'm not on the Justin Fields train where I think that he's going to be this Pro Bowl quarterback after year 4, because it never usually happens in the NFL. So if he can find a way to make it work and he can become their running back, wide receiver, kick returner, punter, I don't know, water boy, I don't know, back massager for Sean Payton, like I'm sure they'll find a way to make him work in any certain situation. And all it costs them is a measly day 3 pick.
Yeah, so I think that's more impactful. So Jerry Jeudy, I'm sorry, but you should have been number 10 on this list. And that's no hate to Jerry Jeudy because you were still the 10th most valuable offseason trade acquisition. So congrats to Jerry Jeudy. We deserve a round of applause for him. You made it at number 3 on this list. I am not sure how. We need to look into how these are ranked here. But that is the 10 most impactful trades. What did you think? Are there any trades that you think Tom Blair missed? Should we send Tom Blair some documents? If so, we'll make sure to keep yours anonymous and give you full credit for it. But yeah, that was the top 10 most valuable trades, but we're into strength training. We're into strength on this show. And the strength of schedule for the NFL came out this year. This is based off of last year. Your opponents coming into 2024 regular season, partway into 2025, who has the toughest schedule and which team can survive it and which team is it going to make completely unravel here. So let's get into it. You have that pulled up on your end. Let's kick us off.
I do. So according to this list, and keep in mind that the schedule will be fully released on Wednesday, so we will cover it next episode. But this is our strength of schedule. Right now, the team who has the hardest schedule, according to this, based on 2023's winning percentages, the Cleveland Browns. So okay. Joe Flacco Magic. And now keep in mind that everybody in this AFC teams are going to be in the top percentile because all 3 of them, or all 4 of them, I should say, had a winning record, and all of them were extremely successful. So that's to keep in mind. Browns, average strength of schedule is winning percentage of 0.547, which meaning, that's right around 9-8, 10-7, the average win cycle percentage for that team against them.
Yeah, because literally the worst team in their division was 9-8 last year. And that was the first time where every single team in their division had a winning record. So if we're going off of strength of schedule based off of last season, yeah, every single team in your division had a strong season last year, and it's the first time it ever happened. Is it going to happen again? No, probably not.
No, but it's funny enough because the Ravens and the Steelers are number 2 and 3 on this list. For strength of schedule.
I mean, the Steelers, every year we think this is going to be the year where Mike Tomlin has a losing season. It just doesn't happen. So I'm going to stop trying to predict it. I'm going to stop trying to be an oracle and say Mike Tomlin's finally going to have a losing season, because it's not going to happen until he leaves Pittsburgh. And then Baltimore, it really just depends on the health of Lamar Jackson. Last season was not the norm with him staying healthy all year. He had an MVP season, but will he be able to follow that up? Time will tell. You lost Patrick Queen to a division rival. How big is that loss going to be? And how big are the additions on your team that you made in the draft going to be?
Yeah. And another team that you mentioned, like the Steelers, who always seem to be consistently good. The Green Bay Packers are number 4 for hardest strength of schedule. Another team, last year was a year where kind of figuring themselves out the first half, and then the second half of the season, they rode to the occasion. They beat the Cowboys in humiliating fashion, and then they took on that 49ers team. But Packers at number 4, I think they'll be fine.
Yeah, did they play the Cowboys? Because I didn't see the Cowboys show up.
I think the Cowboys must have missed the bus because they were not there. All I remember was seeing poor CeeDee Lamb crying on the sidelines.
Yeah, I saw him crying on the sidelines. And you know what the crazy thing was is Dak Prescott's not good when he doesn't have someone rush for 100 yards. And the Cowboys this year were like, you know what? We'll let Tony Pollard walk, not draft a running back, and re-sign Ezekiel Elliott. And we're going to run it back with Zeke. And look out, this is going to be the breakout year for Deuce Vaughn.
I was going to say, like, excuse me, they have Deuce Vaughn.
Deuce Vaughn, yeah.
They have the 5'4" king that is Deuce Vaughn.
The second coming of Pierre Thomas. Congrats.
Congratulations. Texans are also there with the same percentage with the Packers at number 4.
Okay.
I think they'll be fine because I think they have a great team, but that is good things to keep in mind. But the other team, who's number 6 on this list, tied with the Giants, the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, no.
Friends of the show, who have the 6th hardest schedule in the NFL. Because let's remember, they won their division, so they're going to face the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Texans. And then on the other side, we'll see who they face on the other side of it. I believe they're going to face...
Yeah, what division are they facing?
We'll check here. I want to say it's the NFC North, but I might be wrong.
Yikes. Yeah, because the NFC North is my prediction to be the best division in the NFL next year, because you added Aaron Jones to a roster that already had TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, who's the best, if not one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and Jordan Addison. And then you drafted JJ McCarthy, who can be a good game manager for you. And you're actually kind of slowly rebuilding that defense. I don't think it'll be anything special next year, but it'll be bend but not break. And you have B-Flow on that team as well, still coaching the defense. And then you also have Green Bay in that division. They were the youngest team in the playoffs last year. They're only going to get better from here. You have the Lions, and then the Bears. It all depends on Caleb Williams, but seeing Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, Romeo Odunze, and Keenan Allen at that WNBA game all sitting together, I'm like, ooh, damn, that's a team.
That's a team. And it's funny that you say that, because if we switch over to the other side, who have the easiest schedules, Bears have the 3rd easiest schedule, according to last season.
Oh.
So that's something.
That is something. That's not just something. That is
everything.
Yeah, especially for Chicago. I think 3 teams could make the playoffs from that division for sure.
I think the Bears are going to be one of those teams. The teams in front of them are the Saints and Falcons. They'll be they have their average percentage is .453. So you're looking at a team that's anywhere between 7-10 and 8-9.
Yeah, I feel like the Saints need all the help they can get, though, because even with one of the easiest schedules in the NFL, you still have Derek Carr there. Taysom Hill is your only good player, your only saving grace on that team. Saints fans love him, but like Saints are kind of screwed.
Yeah, they really are. It's funny that we look at this too, because 4 of the 5 easiest schedules in the NFL next season is all teams in the NFC South. So the NFL is saying, give this whole division a break, because literally all of them, we have our question marks with. The Saints, somehow every year they find to do salary cap gymnastics and somehow keep afloat. The Falcons, they sign Kirk Cousins and then they draft his replacement same year. That made sense.
after he wanted to leave the Vikings because they were going to draft his replacement. Okay.
Yep. And then the Panthers, Tepperville, they need literally the XFL teams in order for them to make the playoffs. So good luck to them. And then the Buccaneers at number 27 of easiest schedules here. So Buccaneers, maybe they return to glory next year. I have a feeling the Falcons are going to be the teams that make it.
Yeah.
But we'll see. And then other than that, rounding up that team, we have the Chargers, who are right there with the Bucks, and then the Seahawks, Cardinals, and Titans round out easiest schedules.
The Cardinals. Interesting. I think the Cardinals are a team that can definitely make a splash next year, because if you're in the 10 easiest schedule next year, you can split probably with the Rams. You can split with the Seahawks. Maybe you get a game off the 49ers, but with Marvin Harrison Jr. there now, we have Murph from Impractical Jokers coaching up the defense, and then Kyler Murray's finally going to have some fun again. After DeAndre Hopkins left, he was kind of like, ugh, do I have to play football? Now that he has Marvin Harrison, Maserati Marv there, still have James Conner, I think this will be an electric season for the Cardinals.
So my predictions, just based on looking at the strength of schedule, we'll go over it much more in depth next episode when the schedule is officially released. But my earliest predictions are, I think the Bears are going to make the playoffs with that schedule. They have good players on both sides of the ball, and Caleb Williams, if he has already said that he will be the greatest Bears quarterback by week 6.
Literally.
That's not even roasting the Bears. It's actually a fact. I think the Bills are going to have a losing season. I don't see how they're going to be any more than 8-9 next season, and that's me being generous, by the way.
Yeah, let's dwell on that for a bit. The Bills, because the Bills here have the 6th hardest schedule in the NFL. Everyone above them is pretty much from one of the North divisions, and those divisions have one of the hardest teams, but the Bills still have the 6th hardest schedule with the Patriots with a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach who we have no idea how good they're going to be. And then we have the Jets with Aaron Rodgers. They're like, okay, we need wide receiver help. Let's get Mike Williams, who's also hurt all of the time. We need a pass rush. Okay, let's get Hassan Reddick, who disappeared at the end of last season. Great fix there. And then we have Mr. Clean, who has had some internal issues, and there's been some whispers around the Jets organization. And then we have the Miami Dolphins, who are really good against subpar competition, but how many wide receivers do you need to make your below average quarterback look competent? And then it comes to the Buffalo Bills, who at one point in the season last year were 5-6. Below 500 with an easier schedule last year. You barely made the playoffs. And then, okay, who did we have at wide receiver last year? We had Stephon Diggs. Is he there? No. Nope. We had Gabe Davis. Did he catch it? No. Tails. And then he's gone now. So we're relying on Shakur, a rookie wide receiver who we have no idea about. And your tight end duo with Dalton Kincaid, who's building chemistry with Josh Allen. He's still young, takes tight ends a few years to develop. And then Dawson Knox, who's starting to have injury issues. And did I mention you lost your entire defense because you paid Von Miller way too much money? What did I miss?
You got it. I think you got it all.
No, wait. Sean McDermott's still your coach.
Sean McDermott's still your coach. Your solving issues at cap was just cutting everybody, every single person, literally your secondary, your pass rush. The only person you kept was Von Miller. So maybe they thought, well, the Rams last year, their defense was fine with just Aaron Donald. Maybe we'll follow that approach. That's probably not going to work for them. And then on offense, the 2 players who Josh Allen trusted the most are gone, and you literally gave up draft capital to get rid of Stephon Diggs, genius move, and Gabe Davis you got rid of. So now we're relying on Khalil Shakir, relying on Keon Coleman, who, by the way, let's remember, because we have to remind you, every single time we talk about Keon Coleman, the Bills traded away Xavier Worthy for Keon Coleman. We will see how that ages. They have the 6th hardest schedule in the NFL, following all these changes, following the Bills struggling in the first half, and just going on this crazy run with a bunch of good teams they had to beat. And here they are now, and they have to face all these other teams. We'll see how the schedule breaks down, but I think the Bills are going to have a losing season. I think that's a lock.
Yeah, I think it's a lock. And then also, let's remember what Josh Allen looked like without Stephon Diggs. Am I saying he's going to be that bad? No, But we've seen Josh Allen without wide receiver help, and we've seen him with wide receiver help. And when he has Stephon Diggs, when he had Gabe Davis, when he had Dawson Knox, when he had Dalton Kincaid, guess what? He still pressed and he still turned the ball over. And their solution to that was like, okay, let's run the ball more with James Cook, and we're going to be a run first offense, and then limit Josh Allen throwing the ball down the field. It's like, no, you don't want to limit your quarterback's best skill. You just don't want him to turn it over at the worst moment possible. Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers were still able to channel a little bit of Big Ben's. Okay, we had some of the turnovers. However, we won 2 Super Bowls. Brett Favre still won 2 Super Bowls, making some of the dumbest passes in NFL history. But Josh Allen still makes the dumbest passes, but he's also led the league in turnovers.
Yeah. And I mean, another thing, you want to run the football with, good old James Cook. Maybe what helps with the run game? I want to know, like, think about it. Like, you have the run game. Who helps open those gaps? Is it those big guys up front, those little, chess pieces there? Oh, yeah, the offensive line. What do they do in the offseason outside of getting rid of their defense, outside of trading the wide receivers? Oh, yeah, getting rid of those guys. So their offensive line will be worse. And yes, they do have big man Dawson Knox and big man Dalton Kincaid, but they can't block all 5 positions. And then maybe I'm wrong. Call me a casual. How are they going to run the football better if their offensive line got worse?
Casual.
Crazy me.
Casual.
I don't think Josh Allen's going to go back to pre-Stephon Diggs level. I think he'll still be a mighty fine quarterback. I think he'll still be a top 10 quarterback. However, the Bills will struggle because they can't stop the other team. They can't run the football, and they have no one to pass it to. Solution, they fail.
You can't tell me he's going to be better, though. It's like, I think
he can't be better.
He's going to be worse, and then him being worse is also still someone who leads the league in turnovers.
Yeah, so unless if Josh Allen goes into, like, I'm going to just compare him to, if he goes into, like, the Minnesota Kirk Cousins, just super efficient mode, maybe there's a chance.
No way.
But he won't, because that's not his play style at all. You've seen some of the plays he makes. He makes plays that are equally as magnificent and equally as confusing and frustrating to watch. He is literally like watching a roller coaster play out in real time.
Yeah.
So that's a lock. And then any other predictions that you have just based on the schedule?
Just based off the schedule. Yeah, like the Bears making the playoffs there. I think the Browns are probably going to be... I don't think the Browns will make the playoffs this year. I don't know what Deshaun Watson is going to be. Then you went back-to-back years, or you have your coach of the year again, but without Joe Flacco there, you have Jameis Winston. I don't think the Browns are really going to be making the playoffs. And I also think that the Arizona Cardinals are going to be better than the Seahawks and the Rams next year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for sure. They have a better quarterback than both of those teams.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
At this point in their career, I mean, you can argue Matt Stafford is better, but Kyler Murray, way more talented.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think the Cardinals will at least be competing for that 7th seed.
Yeah, definitely competing there, but went over the strength of schedule there, and that was definitely electric there. And then we also have something that's rigged, and that's called the NBA lottery. The dumbest way to draft in sports. If you are Detroit Pistons fans, moment of silence for the Detroit Pistons. You traded the Lions. The Lions got good. You had some runs with Isaiah Thomas there. But now Detroit is known for being the one team to win the finals without a superstar. Whenever people in the NBA talk about, well, this team could win the finals because they're gritty on defense. They can hit threes. Look at the Detroit Pistons with Rick Hamilton and his crazy face mask. They went to LA and beat Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal at the end of their run. They broke up one of the greatest duos in NBA history. They had just won 3 straight NBA titles with Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, and they were the blueprint for being the most boring NBA championship outside of the San Antonio Spurs. And now you suck every single year, and you can't catch a break. Even in this draft, a lot of people are saying that this draft is so bad it's going to get whichever team has the number 1 pick. That GM is probably going to get fired because that's how bad this draft is. But can you at least show some sympathy for Detroit? And then there's been some weird things in the NBA lottery that's happened in the past, right?
How about this? The worst team in the NBA has not gotten the first overall pick in 6 consecutive years. And the Pistons, by the way, in this draft order, in case you missed it, will be picking not first, not second, not third, not even fourth. They will be picking 5th. They will be picking 5th on this list. Now let's just recap the Detroit Pistons this year, okay? A team that we had mentioned Jared Goff beginning of the show and what it was like going to the Lions. If he had gone to what it was equivalent to the Pistons, he'd be dead. Yeah. Truly. Because he probably, I don't know what would have happened. Bad things would have happened. He probably would have retired. They lost 28 consecutive games this year. They had the worst record in Detroit Pistons history. And keep in mind, the Pistons have historically sucked. So that's a big deal. They went 14-68 this year. And again, I will reiterate, 28 consecutive losses in a row. They didn't win from Halloween until January 1st. And that team will be picking 5th in this list. And I understand this is a bad draft. But the draft lottery, every single year, I watch it and I go, why? First of all, they used to have the ping pongs. What happened to the ping pong balls? Now it is just forms. They do it beforehand, like as if that isn't more suspicious.
Yeah.
And then, to make matters worse, the team that gets the number 1 overall pick is always suspicious. And I'll go down the list. Okay, let's start with LeBron leaves Cleveland. What happens the very next year? The very next year, who wins? The Cavaliers. They get Kyrie Irving. Okay, very cool. Next year, the team.
Very cool.
The next year, who wins? Oh, I know. The team that the NBA literally owned at the time. The Pelicans. And who do they get? Anthony Davis. But then it gets weirder. The very next year, who wins again? Oh, yes, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Again, they get Anthony Bennett.
Very cool.
That was tough. And then 2014, who wins again? Oh, yes, again, the Cleveland Cavaliers, winning 3 times in 4 years. Unprecedented. And that was what set up the trade for them to get Kevin Love. Okay. But it goes on because I can go on. How about we start most recently, right? What happened last year? Who won? Oh, yes, the San Antonio Spurs, who have Greg Popovich, who has one more big run in him before he retires because he's like literally in his 70s at this point.
Very cool, very old.
They get Victor Wembanyama. And now this trade. And now the first overall pick is going to be the Atlanta Hawks, who have been actively discussing trading Trae Young. And who has the 4th overall pick? The Spurs. So I say this to say this. The draft lottery is rigged. And if anybody is going to sit here and argue with me, I take you on the battle because I can go through every single draft lottery ever in NBA history and explain to you why it was rigged and why I'm right. So please, in the comments, call me an idiot and I will go to war.
Very cool. Very common.
Yeah. Tell me this isn't, 6 years in a row, the worst team in the NBA has not won it. How does that, what is this for? This is rigged.
It's so stupid too, because the NFL is like the worst team gets it. And I get like the stupidest part about the NBA draft lottery to me is this. The NBA does the draft lottery to prevent teams from tanking, but teams tank anyways when there is a generational player to increase their odds. It's like pushing your chips into the table. You want to increase your odds as much as possible, have the most losses, and then you see things like the Atlanta Hawks, who had a very, very small chance of getting the number 1 pick. And 3%. They were even in the play-in tournament and almost won a game in the NBA play-in tournament if it wasn't for Cade Williams going off and having the greatest game of his life versus the Atlanta Hawks. And then you're preventing teams from tanking, yet it doesn't matter because no one watches the NBA regular season for the most part anyways. Like, I get it can hurt attendance anyways, but if your team already sucks What's going to make it worse, what's going to hurt your attendance worse, is when the team that sucks year after year after year, year after year after year after year, in the case of the Hornets, the Magic, who are finally getting good now. The Wizards, who have sucked. The Pistons, who suck year after year after year. You know what's worse for the NBA product is a playoff team who already has good attendance like the Atlanta Hawks, a franchise like the San Antonio Spurs who already has a built-in fan base and attendance there, who people will already watch their games no matter what. You know what's worse than that? A fan base who is begging for a star player who already sucks anyways, not getting the best player in the draft or not having assets to trade. It's like, okay, if you want to prevent teams from tanking because you want to help the NBA product because you think it's bad for the NBA, you think it's bad for attendance, you think it's bad for ratings. You know what's worse? The teams that suck not getting good players.
You know what kills a sports city? When a team sucks for 20 years. Because the Pistons have sucked since that era. They've sucked since Chauncey Billups left the building in 2008. Since they left, since the team fell apart, they have been completely irrelevant. You know what's the highlight of the Pistons the last 20 years since Chauncey Billups has left the building? Them getting Blake Griffin leaving his prime and getting Greg Monroe out of his prime. And now at this point, the highlight of that team is Cade Cunningham. No disrespect to Cade Cunningham, but this team is terrible. 28 consecutive losses is terrible, dare I say.
Yeah.
So what's worse for the NBA? A team that will suck for, half of the season, when they know the season's over, or a team that sucks for 20 years because they can't, even when they do suck, the NBA will refuse to throw them a bone.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that it's the latter. It's the team that sucks for 20 years. Because you know what it is? We met many fans from Detroit, especially when we go to the special bar, good old Shoppers down here in our local bar, officially the Lions bar, but that's neither here nor there. You know what hurts them the most is watching their team get stomped on, not just by the teams in the NBA, but the NBA themselves is saying, fuck you. Every single year. The Pistons lost 28 consecutive games, and the NBA goes, haha, you're picking fifth. Teehee. Oops. I guess the Atlanta Hawks are going to get him instead. Oops. Teehee.
My bad.
Oops.
A playoff team. They would have been in the playoffs if Trae Young wasn't hurt. It's so frustrating. They're like, oh, yeah, it's bad for the NBA if people tank for good players. It's like, no, but they still need good players. It's like if the worst team didn't get a really good quarterback and wasn't ever able to turn it around, it's like, then it's on the team from there. And if they mess it up from there, that's on them.
Yes.
But I think what's even worse for the league is, ping pong balls. And then you see all these suspicious things. And then it's even more evidence for the fans thinking your game is rigged when the NBA is the easiest game to rig, when all you need to do is call 2 quick ticky-tack fouls on the best player on a team or one of the most important players on a team and have them sitting on the bench. And the NBA has, actually rigged games.
Yes.
Tim Donaghy is evidence.
We
all watched the movie. We all watched him brag about, the mafia would give me money. They would ask me for spreads. They would ask me to call fouls. They would ask me to keep the game close. What's worse is the NBA draft lottery. It makes no sense. It's stupid. It's one of the worst parts about the NBA besides the in-season tournament.
Hey, don't talk down about the in-season tournament champion, LA Lakers.
LA Lakers? Oh,
they have a banner. They have a banner up in Crypto.com Arena because of it.
They do have a banner up in Crypto.com Arena. Some people who do have banners, maybe people make custom banners. I don't know if you get a banner if you win an NBA award, but it was a bad segue anyways. I'm sure you all can respect it. The NBA awards. There you go. Segue. First of all, Nikola Jokic, the MVP, the most controversial MVP maybe in history, where you literally have Shaquille O'Neal tell him to his face, yeah, you weren't the MVP this year. I don't think you deserved it. It was SGA. I'm like, wow. It's not like it was whoa, SJ was clearly the MVP this year. Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams, his second best player, like one of his second best players got hurt, where Jokic carried the Nuggets this season with Jamal Murray missing some time, who's their second best player.
You know what it is? Every single year, the NBA has a narrative, and we know this. That's why for most of the 2010s, it wasn't just LeBron winning MVPs, even though efficient-wise and stat-wise, he was qualified for MVP every year. That's why Steph didn't win it after he won back-to-back MVPs. That's why Kevin Durant didn't win multiple MVPs when all three of them were at the peak of their powers. That's why you saw Russell Westbrook win when he won the year that he had the triple-double.
Yeah,
that's why we saw James Harden. You know, this time around, the MVP, we had, let's remember the last 4 years, right? We had Nikola Jokic win back-to-back seasons, and he was on the quest for winning his third consecutive MVP. And people started to ask around the NBA, is Nikola Jokic, is he deserving of 3 consecutive MVPs? I mean, no one's won 3 consecutive MVPs since Larry Bird in the 80s.
Yeah.
Is he that good? I don't know. I think we should give it to somebody else. Joel Embiid, he's good at basketball. Let's give it to Joel Embiid. And then the playoffs happened. And Joel Embiid, like every year, got tired and lost, like he does.
Very tired.
What happened? Remind me again. What did Nikola Jokic do last year? Is there anything eventful that happened last year for him? Did he do anything in the playoffs?
He swept his way to the finals.
Oh, that's right. He swept his way to the finals, and he won Finals MVP before he went back to Serbia to play with his horses. So their apology to him is saying, you know what? We're sorry we didn't give you 3 consecutive MVPs. Tee-hee, silly us, City Adam Silver, and his bald-ass head. Let's give him another MVP. He has 3 MVPs now, which brings him in elite company. I believe he's only the 9th player in NBA history to have 3 consecutive MVPs, or 3 MVPs in general, because, you know, they ruined that for him.
Yeah.
But that's why he won MVP.
Yeah, and the stupidest part about sports is makeup calls. We see this in the NFL where, like, okay, maybe we shouldn't have called that flag, so we're going to make up a phantom call to even it out. Like, how about you make the right call to begin with? Or in the NBA, they're like, if we miss a call, we'll, like, call a travel or a carry, which happens on every single play. I mean, players pretty much do this every time. Like, plot twist, you're actually not able to do this legally in basketball, or you call a travel, you call an offensive foul, and it's pretty much everyone knows that there are makeup calls within these games. And then we just saw a makeup MVP for Jokic, and everyone is crushing the NBA for it. But you also see these narratives where you have regular season awards applied to players based on what they've done in the playoffs. And now it's not necessarily based on what they've done in the playoffs, but last year it was, can we give Nikola Jokic the MVP 3 straight years if he hasn't even won the title yet? No. That's why he didn't win MVP. And this year, you're like, well, he did win the NBA Finals last year. Maybe we should make up that MVP we should have given him, because Joel Embiid whined and cried his way to an MVP, even though Jokic had a better year than him, statistically, analytics-wise, than Embiid, and was the 1 seed. And since he won the finals this year, they ended up giving him the MVP. But last year, they're like, well, first of all, I don't know if we should give it to him. And race was brought into question, not by us, but there were members of the media like, it's racist if we give him 3 straight MVPs in a row. And that was a real discussion around it. And then Kevin Hart came out this season and said, I don't know if it's good for the MVP, for the NBA, if Jokic wins 3 MVPs. There's legitimate discussions about that going around. Not really my wheelhouse, but it is something that's been talked about with Jokic. So you have all of those narratives. And then this year, you could have given it to SGA as the number 1 seed, but Jokic was the most valuable player to his team because they are still within a game of the 1 seed, and Jamal Murray missed some time. It would be different if one of SGA's second best players were out, but you have him overcoming something. You give him a makeup MVP. So I think when it's a toss-up like that, I don't have a problem giving it to Jokic. And then Draymond Green said Jokic only wins MVPs as a number 1 seed. Has Jokic ever won an MVP as a 1 seed? Oh, wait, no, he hasn't.
Yeah. I don't have a problem. I mean, does SGA deserve MVP? Yes. Does Joker deserve MVP? Yes. And I think third in that race was also Luka Doncic as well.
Yeah.
He was the 5th seed, so I don't have a problem with him not making it. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to this toss-up conversation, last year was not a toss-up, by the way. Every single statistical category, you're looking at analytics and you're looking at just normal stats. Jokic had a better season than Joel Embiid.
Yeah, except for points, but
okay, except for buckets. Great. That's awesome. Because he had, I think he had like 37 points a game. That's great. But this year, it really wasn't one clear winner. So you want to give it to Joker, that's totally fine. Now, this gives me an opportunity to pivot to the other award that I have very strong opinions about. Last year, what did I just say about Joker winning 3 consecutive MVPs? People were saying, is he deserving of the MVP? Because after he wins his 3rd consecutive MVP, he's in the same conversation as Larry Bird, and he did something that even Michael Jordan never did.
Yeah.
But then Rudy Gobert wins Defensive Player of the Year for the 4th time. And he joined a very exclusive group of men that include only Dikembe Mutombo, and for the young viewers who don't know who he is, the Geico guy, and Ben Wallace of those very brief but very good Detroit Pistons teams who have won 4 players. And now these 2 players, Dikembe Mutombo and Ben Wallace, are seen as some of the best defensive players, if not the best defensive players of all time. Rudy Gobert is in that conversation. So now the conversation has to become, is Rudy Gobert one of the greatest defensive players of all time? And this conversation gets even better when you think about the reason why the 2nd person in the Defensive Player of the Year did not win. Because he was a rookie. And that was Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama, after the All-Star break, was the best defensive player on a very bad team, I'll admit it, but he had the best defensive stats in the NBA after the All-Star break, but they refused to give it to him because, God forbid, we give Defensive Player of the Year to a rookie. And that, to me, is just disgraceful. This isn't a Rudy Gobert hatred post by any means, but this is is he deserving of winning 4 Defensive Player of the Years? And for that, I say, I think it should have been Wemby.
Yeah, I definitely think it should have been Wemby, because if you look at just the blocks for Wemby, I'm pretty sure he already tied Rudy Gobert for games with 3 or more blocks in his rookie season. Like, he's already eating Rudy Gobert alive statistically, like NBA history wise. And then we also talk about, okay, he's young, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But if we're going to factor in the MVP, like, we're not going to give it to James Harden because he chokes in the playoffs. We're not going to give it to Russell Westbrook anymore because he doesn't do it in the playoffs. We're bored of giving it to LeBron James. We're bored of giving it to Michael Jordan. So we're going to give it to someone like Steve Nash, who averaged 19 points. Like, okay. But then with Rudy Gobert, it's like, okay, can we look at just how useless he is in the playoffs defensively? I mean, whenever he goes up, and this should be really the judgment for Defensive Player of the Year, are you useless against the best players in the league? And if the answer is yes, you shouldn't be the Defensive Player of the Year, because Jokic cooks him alive. I mean, the famous game where Jokic is going up against Rudy Gobert, they go to send a double team, and then Rudy Gobert says, "No, don't send help." And Jokic just turns to him and he's like, "Brother, I have 37.
Yeah.
Brother, I have 37. And Rudy Gobert, it's like, okay, it's fine. He gets a lot of blocks, but like, does he impact the game on the perimeter? No, not really. Is his blocks as impressive as Derek White leading the league in blocks for guards? No, not really. Is it as impressive as Victor Wembanyama being the best player defensively in the league statistically? Like, no, it's not. And then you have to also look at it, what you said. Is he someone like Dikembe Mutombo? No, Dikembe Mutombo was not useless in the playoffs, and neither was Ben Wallace.
No. And also, some of the statistics with Wembanyama for his rookie season, he was one of only 4 players in NBA history to average 3.5 or more blocks in a season in his rookie season. And this includes players like Manute Bol, very briefly Sam Bowie, who is infamously before Jordan. But he had one of the best defensive seasons, not just by a rookie, but of all time. So I think Wemby deserved it. I think it's ridiculous. And again, it goes back to, is Rudy Gobert one of the best defensive players of all time? You want to talk about the 2010s? Maybe he's in the conversation, but I don't think he's in the same class as these two gentlemen.
Yeah, no, he's not, because every time we see him in the playoffs, he's useless and he gets cooked. And then we can transition right there because we're looking at the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. And I've been someone on the show who said that Rudy Gobert is useless. He means nothing to me in the playoffs. He is a net negative on the floor. And you were talking about this is the dumbest, most useless trade. Why are you trading for Rudy Gobert? We're much better when we go 5 wide with Karl Anthony Towns. And then he's literally getting embarrassed. And finally, as usual, a year later, NBA Twitter catches up to us, whether it's NBA Twitter or NFL Twitter, we'll speak it. And then suddenly during the game, they're like, we need to get Rudy Gobert off the floor right now because he's killing the Timberwolves. You literally saw Jokic defending him yesterday, and he pulled the chair out from under him. It is the most basic Son you move ever, where he's just backing him up and Jokic just goes, whoop, and then, oh, travel. Like, come on. And he can't defend Jokic one-on-one either. What's the point in having the defensive player of the year if he can't go one-on-one on Jokic? And now whenever you double team Jokic, guess what? Wide open dunk for Aaron Gordon. Wide open 3 for KCP, Michael Porter, or Jamal Murray. Not good.
No, not good at all. And that's why I don't think he belongs in that conversation. And I don't think he's been a very positive aspect of the Timberwolves in this series for him. You've seen Karl Anthony Towns have his good moments in this series, although some questionable plays. You've seen Anthony Edwards just reach a whole nother level. Yeah. And I just don't think that's the case with Mr. Rudy Gobert. No disrespect.
Yeah, and I don't think it's the case with Rudy Gobert. And there are other more interesting things about the series outside of Rudy Gobert. Without further ado, like this best game that the Timberwolves had was, when Rudy Gobert wasn't there, and that was the most successful game they had against the Denver Nuggets. But with Denver and Anthony Edwards, it's interesting because with all the Michael Jordan comparisons, Michael Jordan was in college at the same age as Anthony Edwards. He didn't have a 3-point shot. So Anthony Edwards is still on schedule. And a lot of people are upset by the Michael Jordan comparisons, but I don't mind it because he's still young enough where most of these players aren't winning an NBA championship till 27, 28, 29. So I think, honestly, Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves have given the Denver Nuggets the toughest challenge of any team they've faced in the playoffs. They were the only team to get 2 wins against them in the playoffs in a series last year. And that was when he was 21 years old. So for me, I actually think that the Denver Nuggets might be Anthony Edwards' Detroit Pistons. That once he gets through and beats the Denver Nuggets, whether it's next year or the year after that, where he bulks up, add some muscle, they get rid of Rudy Gobert and have an addition by subtraction on that team. I think that once he breaks through against the Nuggets, I think they're going to be his Celtics and Pistons standing in his way. And then once that happens, I think the West is in for some trouble because I think outside of Jason Tatum, I think he may be the best young player in the NBA, and he's definitely the best player in the NBA under 25.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And I like his maturity as well, the way he carries himself, the way he is as a leader as well. I think that's something that the broadcast also mentioned on the show yesterday. They talked about how certain players on the Mount Rushmore, how the way he answers a question compared to players who are in the GOAT conversation might answer it. Nice little shot at he who shall not be named. But I agree there. And I honestly think there's a chance he still beats them this series. I think whoever wins this series is going to end up making it to the finals because I think both of these teams are better than the Thunder and the Mavericks, respectively.
Yeah.
So winner of this series is ended up going to making the finals, and I do think the Nuggets have figured it out, and I think they're going to continue to do well. But I think this series could go 7.
Yeah, I definitely think the series could go 7. The interesting thing for me about the series and the Denver Nuggets specifically is every time, if you watch the show regularly, if you don't watch the show, you kind of just pick up the vibe and just know I say this without saying it, but I'm unveiling the document one more time. Aaron Gordon is the most underrated player in the NBA, and he's the key to the Nuggets' success. That trade, getting him away from Orlando, where he was the best player on that team, people rip the Nuggets for that. They're like, oh, you're trading for Aaron Gordon? Oh, the dunker. But what have we seen? Aaron Gordon has been an exceptional defender. When he D'd up Anthony Davis in the second halves, he was really the one slowing him down and discouraging Anthony Davis in those fourth quarters. And then also, as a rebounder, and then just being in the dunker position where every time Jokic is double teamed, either you have Aaron Gordon right there for a lob or a dunk, or you space the floor and he can hit a corner three. And then also his passing and his efficiency, you have someone who is a 3 or a 2 on a really competitive team, and he's probably your fourth option. And he's defensively been one of your best players, and now he is one of 3 players. Yes, one of 3. Aaron Gordon, one of 3 players in the NBA to have 25, 5, and 5 or better, shooting 93%.
Yeah, that's insane. Every championship team has someone like someone like Aaron Gordon, whether it be the Pistons with Dennis or the Bulls with Dennis Rodman, whether it be the Spurs with Robert Horry or the Warriors with Draymond Green. There's always that one guy. And I think Aaron Gordon, especially if he can go and win 2 or 3 championships with the Nuggets and maybe succeed elsewhere as well, you're talking about a guy who can do pretty much everything on the court. He can facilitate, he can shoot, he can defend, and kind of do what Jamal Murray and Jokic really can't. I know Joker can play defense to some extent, but he's more of that instigator. He's a little bit more of the defender, rebounder. I think that he's going to be a really nice piece for them. And the fact that he shot 10 of 10 in the first half last night, and it was just absolutely parabolic, is a sign of how valuable he is to that team.
Yeah, it's definitely a sign of how valuable. And this was, again, another trade where people are similar to the Andrew Wiggins trade. People are like, Aaron Gordon, that's not going to help at all. And then the Nuggets get swept by the Warriors. Jamal Murray isn't there. And then when he had the opportunity to shine, we're showing how valuable Aaron Gordon actually is. And he's like that Andre Iguodala figure for a championship team, except I think he is a much better scorer than Andre Iguodala, at least more physically imposing.
Yeah, I just think his length at this point in the NBA is super valuable. Iggy was a lot more of a smaller build, where you got someone who's 6'10" in this NBA. You just absolutely trek through, you know?
You know what's crazy, though, is they didn't give up 5 first-round picks for him.
No. I believe they gave up a second-round pick. Yeah. Because I remember the Celtics were in on Aaron Gordon. They said, no, we don't want to give up a second-round pick. This was the Danny Ainge era. They're like, no, I don't want to do that. So the Nuggets were like, sure, second-round pick. I mean, we got Joker. That's all we need, so we're fine. And then look at what's happened now.
Oh, I mean, they could have replaced Al Horford with Aaron Gordon. Like, come on.
Yep, they could have, but no, they kept the draft pick and they drafted whoever the fuck they drafted.
Yeah, and it's just, it's a testament to the Danny Ainge Celtics, but it's a testament to the Nuggets and how they've been able to make these little moves to help get the roster up there. But I think with the Timberwolves Nuggets series, the entire Lakers series, and the first 2 games of the Timberwolves series, Jokic looked like tired and lethargic and like kind of out of it. But like these last 2 games, I've seen him very engaged. It seems like he's kind of flipped a switch there. So excited to see how this plays out. But give credit to Michael Malone for being a great head coach. This is like the one team that's so confusing. I feel like the Denver Nuggets really aren't that hateable. Like they don't do anything too egregious to me. Like there's always like championship stuff and trash talk after that, but like the vitriol for the Nuggets after they dropped 2 and like how fast people want to bury them. The first thing I thought of when they went down 2-0 was Golden State versus Memphis when they had Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol. And they ended up coming back and winning that game in 6. They were down 2-1. And the Nuggets also in the bubble, let's not forget, came back from being down 3-1, not once, but twice.
Yeah. No, I don't understand it either, because what's to hate about Joker? I mean, honestly, he's one of the most likable superstars of recent memory. I mean, who else can you compare him to? I mean, maybe Giannis. I know Giannis is likable, but like
Tim Duncan.
Yeah, I mean, even with some of these major superstars of the 2010s, like certainly not LeBron, Steph Curry, but even Steph Curry has his arrogance. KD's certainly not likable. So probably the most likable of our generation. And nobody really has like a massive ego on that team either.
Yeah.
They're kind of egoless. Everyone kind of does their role.
And that's because of him.
Yeah.
He's also like the most like he's like one of the most randomly funniest NBA players. Because like when they had like the Despicable Me commercial, like I thought that was funny, where he's like, oh, I wore a suit and they thought I looked like Gru.
Yeah.
And then he has like the hotels commercials. I thought those were funny, but this has probably been one of the most entertaining series so far in the NBA playoffs, outside of maybe the Pacers and the Knicks, where that was game one. The Pacers were in control, and then they call a ticky-tack foul on Miles Turner, which you rarely see play. And then I'm like, I smell buffoonery in this series.
Yeah. And then the Knicks went out to that 2-0 series lead. You saw them, especially that last play in game one, where there was this bullshit foul with the Pacers getting the ball, and then the Knicks end up getting it. They score, and then basically it finishes the game. And then the last two games, it's been the Pacers just kind of annihilating the Knicks. The Knicks, they seem that they're kind of falling apart. Jalen Brunson's banged up. They got Mitchell Robinson banged up. Obviously, Julius Randle hasn't played in several months. But the team seems like they're kind of falling apart. The magic that was the Knicks seems to be crumbling. We'll see how they respond in game 5. But are you worried about the Knicks at this point, especially after how the last two games have gone?
Yes. I'm definitely worried about the Knicks. And of course, they're falling apart because Tom Thibodeau is the only coach in NBA history that thinks it's a good idea to let someone play an entire game. He's the only coach that runs his players into the ground repeatedly, and then year after year after year, after ruining Derrick Rose's career, after having tired players and not making it past the second round more than once. And that was because you had the sensational talent of Derrick Rose, and he was so transcendent that even he rose above the stupidity of Tom Thibodeau. And the Knicks are suddenly the only team that's gritty and plays defense in the NBA. It's like, every team in the playoffs right now is gritty and can play defense. The Knicks are not special. They are the New York Knicks. You have Jalen Brunson, who has to drop 40 points every single night for you to win. That's not sustainable. You know what Boston's going to do to that? Okay, Drew, go post him up. Derek White, go post him up. Jaylen Brown, go post him up. Jason Tatum, go post him up. How much fun are you going to be having when the Celtics repeatedly post you up? And that's if you get past the Indiana Pacers. But Tom Thibodeau just has this through line of running his players into the ground. He's like, oh, I don't know why my entire team is hurt. Maybe because you play your players 37 to 44 minutes on a random Tuesday in February when no one gives a fuck. They want them in the second round available. Look at your record without OG Anunoby. You are a sub 500 to bad team without Julius Randle. You're an okay team, and he's the second best player on your team, statistically at least. And then Jalen Brunson is battling through injuries because you're playing him so much. Josh Hart is probably the only player who's strong enough and athletic enough to be able to go out there and play 48 minutes. And even him, at the beginning of game 4, he was already exhausted. And you expect to win 4 7-game series? Not just 1, but 4? Give me a break.
No, it's amazing too, because everywhere he goes, it's kind of been that same narrative. In Chicago, we see him absolutely drain Derrick Rose. Hell, you even saw him drain even Joakim Noah as well. You just saw that whole team just get exhausted by the end of it. Minnesota, you saw him exhaust, whether it be Karl Anthony Towns, whether it be Jimmy Butler, whether it be Andrew Wiggins, exhaust them. And then here we are now. Jalen Brunson, basically every game is putting up 50 points. He's going into Michael Jordan mode, literally. And it's barely getting them by. So this is a team that I actually really liked entering the playoffs. Do I think they can still beat the Pacers? Yes. However, my faith in them is declining because of the fact of how banged up they've been, because of how exhausted they are. And honestly, if this even goes 7 games, I don't see how the Celtics don't winning at least, I think 5 games, only because they can't seem to win a game 2.
Yeah.
But I just don't see how much further they can go. They're going to make the Eastern Conference Finals and die. Yeah. Literally. All of them are going to be in the New York hospital by the end of it.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll make it there. And I picked the Pacers to win the series because I thought, okay, in round 1, you had Joel Embiid, who was not crashing the glass, who was not hustling, who seemed like he was injured. He was limping up the court. At some moments of the game, it looked like he couldn't run. Oh, who's their next big after that? No one. Literally no one. You have Paul Reed. Congratulations. You have Paul Reed. He's on the team. It's true. And then you have Tobias Harris. Useless.
Literally, yeah.
Literally
completely useless. 0 points in game 7.
0 points in game 7. And then I was like, the Pacers, I don't know. Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, as crazy as it seems, I think that's going to give them more trouble on the offensive glass than Joel Embiid did. And then also, the Knicks were the slowest team in the league. And then Josh Hart and Tom Thibodeau are like, yeah, we're excited to play fast versus the Pacers. I'm like, when you run your players into the ground, you're telling me you want to be in a track meet with a team that has one of the better benches left in the NBA when you don't have one and you're running up and down the court nonstop, and we're in the semifinals now. No more 3-day breaks. We're playing every other game now, and you're playing up against the fastest team in the league, and you're not trying to slow the game down. You're trying to run with them when you don't have a bench, and Josh Hart's playing 48 minutes, and he looks exhausted in game 4. Not a great plan.
No, not a great plan at all. And it's interesting because obviously we know Tom Thibodeau, he's bounced around the league quite a lot at this point. He coached the Bulls, he coached the Timberwolves, and now he has coached the Knicks. But it seems like there's a theme of Tom Thibodeau figures in the NBA that we've seen. And it's a good transition into the Suns hire, right? Because we talked about Mike Budenholzer potentially joining the Suns. They fire Frank Vogel. He'll find a job somewhere. Thoughts on Mike Budenholzer on the Suns?
It's fine. I mean, my problem with the NBA is like, oh, we fire Frank Vogel, who's gone from Orlando to Indiana to LA. Oh, he won a championship in LA, and then they fired him after that. He won a championship. The only fault he had was that you decided to get rid of Dwight Howard, JaVale McGee, and KCP and Danny Green.
And Rondo.
All of your size and defense and IQ gone out the door, except for LeBron. And then you fire him, and then we see Mike Budenholzer get fired by the Bucks. All he did was get you to the finals. His only problem was that Chris Middleton got hurt and Giannis got hurt in a series against the Miami Heat and weren't fully healthy. And then you got unlucky the year before that because Chris Middleton was hurt. And then, oh, God forbid that Jason Tatum has the game of his life and Boston shoots the lights out in game 7. Boston was just the better team. That's not a fireable offense. And then with the NBA, there's no patience anymore. And we're just seeing the same coach go from place. Okay, this star player is unhappy. We failed and didn't build a roster good enough for them. You're gone out the door. Same thing with Frank Vogel happened in LA. Roster wasn't good enough. Not his fault. He's gone. Same thing happened in Phoenix. Roster not good enough. He's gone. When he's already proven that he can take you to a championship. And then Mike Budenholzer, he's a fine head coach, but it's like we're just seeing the same coaches like like right around. It's musical chairs around the NBA, and it's like it's okay, but you're not doing anything innovative anymore, and we're just sending the same coach from here to here to here.
Yeah, and if you notice how the successful franchises over the last decade have performed, it's those ones who keep their head coach long term. Whether it be Golden State with Steve Kerr, or the Heat with Eric Spoelstra, or the Nuggets with Mike Malone. Those 3 teams, obviously they've been successful over the last several years as well. But then there's teams like the Suns and the Lakers and the Bucks who are reactionary.
Yeah.
I'll still go back to the Darvin Ham take. We talked about it last week, but Darvin Ham and his time with the Lakers had brought them to the Western Conference Finals, which they had no business making, honest to God. Austin Reeves just went parabolic, and LeBron played like young LeBron for a second.
Yeah.
And then this year, they led the Nuggets in 90% of the series, but they lost in 5, and all of a sudden he's fired at this point. Like, just absolutely ridiculous. And the NBA, part of the reason why a lot of these teams fail is because of their impatience. And I think that this hire, like by the Suns, I think it's fine, but we all know he's not going to last at
Yeah.
the end. He's going to last maybe 3 seasons, and he's going to be gone, and he's going to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and then the stupidest version of that is the Hornets hiring Steve Clifford twice. Oh, it didn't work the first time. It'll definitely work the second time with no relationship ever.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't work. And then also the complete opposite end of the spectrum of that is the Dallas Mavericks. Credit to you, Mark Cuban, for keeping Jason Kidd, because people were calling for Jason Kidd's head last year. They were calling for his head at points during the season this year, and they're like, you know what? Maybe us not having any defensive players aren't your fault, a la the Milwaukee Bucks when they hired Doc Rivers. It's like, oh, Doc Rivers, defensive-minded head coach. Let's get rid of our head coach that we just hired. Now we're paying 4 head coaches right now? 3? 4? How many coaches are they paying? We've lost track. So now you have a situation where the Bucks are paying 3 head coaches, where we already know that Doc Rivers is an underachiever unless he has the best 4 players as a group there. Where on the other side, the Mavericks were like, you know what we should do? We should actually get players who can play defense. So we go out there, we get Gafford, we get PJ Washington, who is now having the best year of his career, and it seems like they've really unlocked something with him versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, where we have back-to-back games of PJ Washington getting over 22 points, which is absolutely incredible when you have Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. And now my worry with the Oklahoma City Thunder is Chet going to be soft? And we're kind of seeing that Chet is kind of soft right now.
Yeah, honestly, I've been more impressed with what I've seen with the duo of Luka and Kyrie. I feel like Luka still gets a lot of hate for somebody who is also very young. I know we talked about Tatum a lot and we talk about Anthony Edwards, but I feel like Luka Doncic gets a lot of hate because he hasn't quite won in the NBA at this point. I think if he can make it past this series and then take on the Nuggets or Timberwolves, has a chance to make the finals, he should get his flowers there. But I've liked this series to this point. I think that Kyrie and Luka complement each other well. And I think the Thunder are kind of showing that they are a little bit young and maybe the stars might be a little bright.
Yeah, the stars are definitely a little bright because they seem overwhelmed versus the Dallas Mavericks. Like SGA had he had 33, 9, and 9, and they still lost. And this is with Luka basically on one leg here. But now we're starting to see Dallas has some of the more reliable role players here, with PJ Washington being the player that's been able to step up, stretch the floor, take the pressure off of Kyrie and Luka. And then Dallas also has 2 closers here, where SGA he's just had some moments where he's not making the right decisions at the end of the game. And it's really not the Thunder's fault. They're the youngest team in the NBA playoffs. They're the youngest number 1 seed ever. It's impressive that they got to the second round, and shout out to them for doing it. But Dallas is simply just the better team, and they have the 2 best players on the floor right now currently in Kyrie and Luka Doncic.
Yeah, and I trust their coaching too. Jason Kidd is somebody who's also been a lot of backlash, but he's somebody who's been to an NBA Finals before. And so he has that history just as a coach. And obviously he's been around the league as well as a coach as well. So I think that's why I picked the Mavericks to win this series. I felt like they had more championship experience. You have Kyrie, who's been there. You have Jason Kidd, who did it as a head coach. So that's why I picked them initially in this series. And I think that experience is showing off in this series at this point.
Yeah, and I think that experience will carry through. So whether it's the Timberwolves or the Nuggets, my prediction going into the playoffs was Mavericks and Denver Nuggets. I'm still going to stick with that. And then I picked Boston and the Knicks to get to the conference championship. Right now, I picked the Pacers in the playoffs, though, once I kind of saw how the matchups were falling there. So I think it'll be Celtics and Pacers. And then we have probably Mavericks and Nuggets, but we'll see. Anything can happen, especially you have this is one of 8 series in NBA history where the road team has won the first 4 games of the series.
Yeah, I think for my predictions, I'm going to stick with Celtics Knicks. I think the Knicks are going to squeak by the Pacers, and then when they face the Celtics, they're going to be absolutely gassed. But I'll stick to my guns just because I've stuck to them to this point, and I'll stay there. And then on the other side, I do think that the Mavericks are going to surpass the Thunder. And Nuggets, and Timberwolves, I'll still pick with the Nuggets because they are the defending champs. They are the best team in basketball. And I do think that they figured out a strategy against the Timberwolves. So I'll stick with Nuggets, Mavericks, and then Celtics, Knicks.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a great prediction, but it's been a great NBA playoff so far, and can't say the same thing for mainstream media. We've kind of seen, the fall of ESPN where First Take is good, but it's still struggling to find its footing. You have people like Tim Legler and JJ Redick who are exceptional, but when you have the Kendrick Perkins, the Dan Orlovskis of the world, it's just like, okay. And then Undisputed, you have the Paul Pierce situation where they were making a comeback with Paul Pierce kind of falling out, but we're kind of seeing the rise of one of the biggest brands in sports quickly rising to the top, and that is Antonio Brown's independent media company, CTESPN, taking the world by storm. And he has honestly been on a tear on social media. It's been lovely to see. He has probably not only the best meme page, the best sports page, but the best satire commentary page since the Babylon Bee took the internet by storm. What an incredible run AB is on right now.
I need to pull up his tweets real quick just so we can run through them, because honestly, it's honestly peak Twitter. I mean, we had like in the 2010s, right? We had Donald Trump in his Twitter when he was president.
Yeah.
And then after that, we had a period where Elon's tweets were funny. We had some Kanye tweets that were funny. But now at this point, I think he takes the throne.
Yeah,
because
Andrew
honestly,
Tate for a little bit.
Andrew Tate had some funny tweets. But Antonio Brown, Mr. CT ESPN himself, I think he might be the best.
Is it Harry? That's the question.
Is it Harry? And so I'll pull up some of these tweets here, but CT ESPN really going off.
Yeah, and he went to Caitlin Clark's game there, and he asked for an autograph, and he asked her to sign it. I shave was turned down, unfortunately, but he did go out there and ask, and he's someone that it's like he's such a loose cannon that you can't take it seriously. I don't know whether to laugh, to think it's sad, or to do both.
Yeah, and I'm just looking here as I go through his Twitter. He released his first episode of the CT ESPN podcast with none other than the guy on your shirt right here, good old Tyreek Hill.
They both have CTE.
Oh, the fuck they do. Absolutely. He has his daily special of Cracker of the Day.
Cracker of the Day? Yeah, he's literally ending racism.
Hey, he's revealing the best cracker.
Because he has Cracker of the Day, and then he also has Ninja of the Day as well. So he's bringing two communities together, and Antonio Brown has put the burden of ending racism heavy as the crown on top of the head who wears it. But AB is trying to end racism, and you can't help but admire it.
Yeah, and I really wish I could share this tweet because, I mean, look at this. I mean, arm strength, ending racism, crackers and ninjas, AB ending racism. It's a fact.
It is a fact. What do you guys think of CTESPN? Do you think it's the worst thing the internet has ever seen? Do you think it crosses the line, or do you think it's the perfect blend of sports and comedy that the internet has been craving right now? But one thing I can say, it's been better than anything on FS1 or ESPN outside of JJ Redick and Tim Legler. But
I'd rather watch this than watch a bunch of dumb spin-offs, reboots, or dumb movie sequels, which we seem to just keep going in and out of each and every year.
Yeah.
And that's a good transition to our last segment of the show, because we had the Planet of the Apes movies continue on this series, and they just released what is this official title? It's the Legacy of
Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they released their fourth installment into the series. How was it? I guess I haven't seen it quite yet.
It was actually awesome. I didn't know what to think of this because it's tough when you have the fourth movie in a franchise, especially when the last two were as good as they were. I think the first one was a really cool movie, but it's rare when you're in a movie franchise and the first movie is probably the worst. Because I think Dawn of the Planet of the Apes take it up to a whole new level. You have that scene where the monkey's playing with the soldiers and they're like, oh, haha, he has our assault rifle, shoots both of them. And I think that movie had some really dark themes and it was really intense. And then War for the Planet of the Apes, straight up Holocaust allegory. I mean, that movie, you want to talk about dark themes, keeping the intensity. And then this movie opens up it's Caesar's funeral. I'll try and keep the spoiler free. And basically, you have this one ape who's obsessed with Roman history. So he's kind of being the emperor here. And in the trailer, you hear, "What a wonderful day," repeated over and over. So he has basically been raiding these villages and taking these different tribes of apes to be his slaves here, part of his kingdom, because he's trying to expedite evolution. And he's talking to them. He's like, "Have you ever heard of the term evolution?" And then he's trying to get into basically what is this boat that contains some military information that's going to basically give him access to create and make weapons. So it opens up, and then you're following this one monkey who his village gets kidnapped and destroyed, and it's classic journey movie. And then he's learning about how apes and humans used to coexist, but it does a really good job of keeping the dark, cynical vibe of the other movies. And it's a great adventure movie, and it goes by really fast. And then the ending is one of the best, most brutal endings I've seen in a while. And then you want to know how awesome this movie is? The apes are training eagles. So they're literally calling eagles. It opens up, and you get introduced to the characters because you each have to grab an egg, and then you have to learn how to bond with the eagle. And his dad is like the master of the eagles there. So all of the apes have eagles there, and it plays a really big part of the story. But like, the movie is awesome. The acting is really good. It keeps the really dark, cynical themes, and it kind of keeps you guessing on where the movie's going exactly. And I think it's a perfect, almost soft reboot where Caesar dies at the beginning of the movie. So they're like, this is a new trilogy here. It's what Star Wars should have done with the new movies, like just transitioning to a new character. And it's a perfect way to just start out with a new antagonist. To bring the series forward into probably a new trilogy. And I do like that the Planet of the Apes movies have a lot of space between it. Like, you don't get one more than 3 to 5 years between it, because you can work on the story, animation, and then it makes the movies a lot more impactful, because like, oh, okay, yeah, another one of those movies is coming out. And now you have 4 really good movies in a franchise, which rarely ever happens.
Yeah, and that made me think about it because we had talked about this off air about because I'm a big fan of the Planet of the Apes series. I liked even the first one, which a lot of people give a lot of grief for. I really liked that, and then it just continuously got better and better as the series progressed. And it's good to see that they might have been doing it justice into the 4th movie as well. But it made me think about movies that have been successful with 4 movies. And so I went through a number of lists to just deem what Hollywood deemed like successful, and most
Yeah.
of the time that's box office. So we'll go through them all and talk about like which movies have maybe the best 4 movies
Yeah,
in a
which
row,
franchises?
or
Yeah.
just massive franchises. And I just think about like some of the big ones, which I know for sure have made terrible movies, like Star Wars is a prime example. At this point, we look at Star Wars, they've made 11 movies, and I think half of them are good. Is that fair to say about half of the Star Wars movies are good?
So my problem with Star Wars is I didn't watch it till I was 16.
So they suck.
And so yeah, I don't like any of them except for Rogue One.
Okay, well that's fair. I think even if you were a kid, you can admit that the sequel trilogy is bad, and the prequel trilogy, there's maybe one good movie in there, and
Yeah.
then the other ones are nostalgic, and then the rest of them, I mean, all the ones that have like the Han Solo movie, miss. I mean, the
Just
rest of them,
mid.
yeah, it's just super mid. Marvel, another Disney product. They have had some successful movies. They've had the Infinity Wars. They've had the
Yeah.
Avengers.
It's just campy, and it's not like, it's like you can't say that they're bad movies, but you can't say they're like exceptional. I will say that like um Avengers Infinity War is probably one of the hardest movies to just pull off, with how many characters and how they were able to balance it. So cinematically, it was kind of a spectacle, the way they were able to do it. And it may be like the biggest movie of all time, because I felt like everyone saw it and it ended on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that all 4 Avengers movies are great like the Apes movies are.
Yeah. And then there's like the Fast and the Furious. I'm just going through all the big
Ugh.
ones. A lot of those are bad.
Did they really put Fast and the Furious?
They put Fast and the Furious there. I don't even know if they have 4 consecutive movies in that franchise that are good. But
Or two.
now we get to the real meat and potatoes here. John Wick. They made 4.
Yeah.
Are those all 4 solid 4-movie franchises?
Yeah, so I would say the first one and the fourth one are really spectacular movies. Like the Apes have one, which is a really good movie, and then I would say the next 3 are spectacular. But the second and the third one, they're both good, but I wouldn't say that they're great.
Okay. And then following in that same breath, Mission Impossible.
Yeah, Mission Impossible is interesting because the first 3 are probably the worst in the franchise, and then they almost rebooted it with 4, 5, and 6, one of the best action trilogies of all time.
Okay.
But 7 was just kind of mid for me.
Okay, fair enough. And then we have Alien, which I don't even know.
Alien 1 and 2 are both really good, but like Prometheus is like very eerie, and I would say Prometheus is like a lot of people like have mixed feelings about it, but I really like the vibe of Prometheus.
Okay. Transformers.
Ugh.
Yeah, I was going to say, outside of the first and second one, I don't give a fuck about
Just
them.
CGI garbage.
Yep.
Michael Bay jerking off all over the screen.
Yep. Terminator's another example of that. Just they made 2 great movies, and then the rest of them were just an absolute nightmare.
But the second one's probably one of the greatest action movies of all time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Despicable Me. They put Despicable Me on here.
Maybe.
I think that's a very
maybe for kids movies.
For kids movies, I mean, all 3 Despicable Me's are great, and the Minions movie is a spectacle.
They know the formula. So all of the franchises like that are great that have 4 really good movies, like Mission Impossible has like 3 really good movies, the Apes movies, Despicable Me, if you want to talk about kids movies, Toy Story I would put up there. I think all 4 of those movies are really good. The fourth one, like most people who are nostalgic about the early ones, of course it's not going to be as good as the other ones because you're not a kid when you're watching it. But I think what all those series have in common is they space them all out. It's like the Kendrick Lamar and Drake argument. Would you rather have a mediocre to bad album every year, or would you rather have a classic every 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, and I think that's been the argument there. The last one in this rotation that was mentioned here that you'll appreciate, Air Bud.
Air Bud, hell yeah! Every Air Bud movie is great. That's like that's like a guilty pleasure movie. But like, how can you hate those movies? To be honest,
they're amazing. Honestly, to God, you want to get high one night and just watch all of the Air Bud movies. The Air Buddies, maybe not so much, but like watching him play baseball, watching him play football, watching him play basketball, tennis, soccer, everything. He plays every single sport and he dominates. Arguably the greatest of all time.
And you draw the line at baseball?
I draw the line at baseball because that's when you take me out of the movie. Because I myself, can I see a dog playing well in basketball? Sure.
Volleyball? Absolutely.
Volleyball? Absolutely. Can a dog hold a football? Yes. Granted, can a 300-pound linebacker tackle him? We won't get there.
No, I don't think so. Not Air Bud. He's too agile.
Right. But baseball is where I draw the line. Because for me, seeing a dog hold a bat the way it does and it hitting a home run is just a lie. Like I've watched baseball, I've played baseball before. That dog is not hitting a home run. That bat speed is atrocious. That's lucky if it even leaves the infield.
Yeah.
But it's a movie. I can't create it too hard. It's made for kids.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and the point of this too is like we've seen a lot of really good trilogies like Indiana Jones, the original Star Wars movies if you watch them when they first came out. Lord of the Rings, like together some people say that's the greatest movie ever made, but the problem is it's really hard to make a great 4th movie in a franchise.
Yeah, and The Dark Knight, they had another great trilogy. I'll throw in another one, The Godfather as well. But that 4th movie is really hard to can do, and if you do it right, then you're in a special category, and I think that Planet of the Apes will be there.
Yeah, Planet of the Apes will be there too. And then speaking of like, I don't know, like we talked about Air Bud in crossing over in sports, and it like kind of reminded me about the whole Austin Rivers, the NBA versus the NFL. They're kind of like having a feud right now where like everyone is trying to argue whether an NBA player or NFL player could make that transition. And if so, Austin Rivers was like, I could name 30 players right now who could play in the NFL from the NBA, and you couldn't say the same about the NFL coming into the NBA. First of all, yeah, 53-man roster. Like, okay, of course you're going to have 30 more players eligible because the NBA has the smallest percentage of any league of players that make it.
Yeah. And who actually play. I mean, you have
Yeah.
maybe 8 or 9 players that'll play at any given time. Also, just because you make the team does not mean that you play. And if I'm looking at NFL to NBA, I think there are plenty of NFL players that can go into the NBA. And as long as they have a jump shot, they will succeed in the NBA. Myles Garrett is a prime example. You want to talk about Defensive Player of the Year? If Myles Garrett is playing at center, who the hell is going to go in that paint?
Yeah.
Not me. I'm not going in that paint. And if you're looking at like CJ Stroud, if CJ Stroud has a jumper, he's going to succeed in the NFL. Hell, even if you want to talk about a slot receiver, they have a jump shot, they're going to make it in the NFL. Julian Edelman probably could have been just fine. You know? And then obviously the great Tyreek Hill,
yeah.
with as fast as he is, if he has a jumper, he'll be good. Now, on the other side of it, NBA players going to the NFL. Can I see somebody like let's use Anthony Davis as an example. Big physical guy. Can I see Anthony Davis every single play going through a car crash, which is basically what they describe it as? No, I cannot.
He would get hurt.
He would get hurt.
He's already fragile in the NBA, which is a non-contact sport at this point.
It makes me think who in the NBA would succeed. And for me, if he had prime LeBron with how durable he was, he would probably succeed. There was rumor he was going to be a tight end for the Cowboys during the lockout. He would have done just fine. Anthony Edwards would probably be fine.
Yeah, he could be a good receiver line, safety.
But who do you think would succeed in the NFL?
In the NFL, I don't know. It's tough because like the NBA, you have to think of like who's the most durable, who's the toughest, and kind of like who has that no nonsense attitude where they're not going to be soft. So the two people that stand out the most in the NBA right now currently to me would be Jimmy Butler and Jalen Brunson.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
I would say Jimmy Butler could be a really good tight end. He would be a good physical player. He'd be a really good edge rusher. And then Jalen Brunson, I think, would be a great slot receiver. Those are two players who grind, who work harder than anyone else in the room. And then with the NBA, it's like, well, if Hartenstein, Luke Cornett can make an impact in the playoffs, you're telling me TJ Watt and Myles Garrett can't? Two of the scariest people in the league. What about Micah Parsons?
Yeah, I feel like every edge rusher can play in the NBA as a big man. It's whether or not they have the hype, but either way, like those big physical guys, especially in physical basketball, I don't see how they don't succeed.
Yeah. And the dumbest part about Austin Rivers, and it's like he could have had an argument if he didn't have the most incredibly stupid take possible, was James Jones. I made more money than you. It's like, okay, what does that mean, really? And like, you're going back and forth with James Jones. James Jones, like, hell no. And then Austin Rivers, like, I made more money than you. It's like, okay, yeah, your daddy got you paid. Congrats.
Also, James Jones, that's the person that you're saying you made more money than? How about you compare yourself to like Gordon Hayward, or compare yourself to Josh Hart, or compare yourself to somebody?
No, James Jones, the Packers receiver.
Oh.
Yeah, no, James Jones and Austin Rivers were going back and forth because James Jones is on Speak, which was Speak for Yourself on Fox. And James Jones is like, no, you guys are pansies. You guys are too soft. You guys wear lace underwear. And Austin Rivers is like, well, I made more money in my career in 1 year than you did, when that really doesn't have any relevancy. It's like when Eminem or Kendrick is like, I have more streams than you. It's like, okay, well, how is that relevant to a rap battle? It's like having more streams, like, of course you're the biggest artist. Like, you can just punch down. And then if that's the argument, but like with Austin Rivers, like, I'm a role player. It's like, yeah, there's 53 players on an NFL roster, and the NBA goes from October all the way into June, where the NFL is just September to February, and they only have 17 games, and they have 53 people to pay as opposed to like 10.
Yeah. So it's ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I think that NFL players would succeed more in the NBA than vice versa, just based on the physicality. So Let us know what you think in the comments section below. Most importantly of all, though, stay brick.